June 24th, 1945. Moscow. Red Square. The sky is covered with leaden clouds. A fine, cold rain drizzles, but the multi-thousand crowd filling the stands and the pavement seems not to notice the bad weather. The air is so electrified that it seems one spark is enough for the space to explode from the overflowing energy. At 10 o'clock in the morning, to the chimes of the Spasskaya Tower, a horseman on a snow-white Arabian stallion named Kumir rides out of the gates. This is Georgy Konstantinovich Zhukov. He sits confidently in the saddle, his uniform glitters with orders, and his face expresses unwavering determination and triumph. At this moment, he is not just a military leader. He is the living embodiment of victory, an ancient god of war descended to mortals to accept their worship. Hundreds of banners of the defeated enemy are thrown at the foot of the mausoleum, and it seems that it is impossible to rise higher than this moment. But if one looks closely at the chronicle of that day, one can notice one detail hidden from the enthusiastic eyes of the crowd. On the tribune of the mausoleum, slightly in the background, stands Iosif Stalin. He observes the triumph of his marshal. In his gaze, there is not the unconditional joy that illuminates the faces of the soldiers. There is a cold calculation and a barely perceptible shadow of anxiety. While Zhukov rides around the troops, basking in the waves of popular love, a complex, invisible mechanism is already starting in the mind of the Supreme Commander-in-Chief. History knows many examples when saviors of the fatherland became a threat to rulers. Zhukov's popularity became absolute, his authority in the army boundless. For a totalitarian system where the center of gravity can only be one figure, the appearance of a second sun in the sky was an unacceptable violation of the laws of political physics. It is here, to the sounds of solemn marches and shouts of "Hurrah!" that the countdown begins. Triumph already contains the seed of future tragedy. After the end of the war, the Soviet Union found itself in a difficult situation. The external enemy was defeated, but inside the country, the system required a reboot. A huge army, having passed through all of Europe, saw a different life. Officers and soldiers returned home with a sense of self-worth, with the feeling that they were masters of their own destiny. This generation of victors represented a potential danger to the party nomenclature, accustomed to unquestioning obedience. And the symbol of this new, proud force was Marshal Zhukov. In the corridors of the Kremlin and in private dachas, quiet conversations began. Whispers discussed that Georgy Konstantinovich had become too independent, that he allowed himself sharp remarks addressed to the political leadership, that he attributed all merits in the defeat of Germany exclusively to himself. Minister of State Security Viktor Abakumov, a man with cold eyes and an absolute intuition for the leader's fears, began assembling a dossier. This was not a spontaneous attack. It was a methodical, painstaking work to create compromising material. Like a skilled spider, the system began to weave a web around the hero, waiting for the moment when the victim would make a mistake. And Zhukov, with his direct, sometimes rude character, with his habit of speaking truth to power, provided reasons for such observations. He felt invulnerable, believing that his merits served as a reliable shield against any intrigues. This was his main delusion. In the world of high politics, past merits do not guarantee future safety. They only raise the stakes in the game. The first blow was struck not directly at the marshal, but at his entourage. This is a classic tactic. To fell an oak, one must first cut its roots. The so-called, quote, zero began. In the spring of 1946, leaders of the aviation industry, and the Air Force Command were arrested, including Chief Marshal of Aviation Alexander Novikov. Novikov was not just Zhukov's colleague, he was his comrade in arms, a man with whom they planned operations together and shared the hardships of frontline life. But in the dungeons of the Ministry of State Security, old ties crumbled under the pressure of a monstrous press. The investigators worked harshly. The arrested were required not so much to confess to sabotage or the production of low-quality aircraft, but to give testimony of a political nature. The main question that interested the investigation concerned Georgy Zhukov. Was there a military conspiracy? Was Zhukov preparing a coup? Were there talks about removing Stalin? Under the influence of physical and moral pressure, driven to despair, Novikov signed documents that landed on Stalin's desk. These papers contained allegations that Zhukov was allegedly gathering a group of disgruntled generals around him, criticizing the government, and behaving like a _one_, ready to seize power. This testimony became the formal pretext for convening the main military council in June 1946. This meeting became one of the most dramatic moments in the post-war history of the USSR. All the country's top military leaders gathered in the hall. Konev, Rokossovsky, Vasilevsky, Bulganin, and others. Stalin presided. The atmosphere was heavy, permeated with the smell of danger. Everyone present understood. Today, Zhukov is being judged, and tomorrow, any of them could be in his place. Stalin read Novikov's testimony. The words that Zhukov downplays the role of the Supreme High Command and states that all victories were won only by him sounded like a verdict. The discussion began, and here the full depth of human tragedy and the complexity of relations within the military elite became apparent. These people had endured a terrible war together. They had entrusted each other with their lives. But now, in the face of the omnipotent leader, their unity fractured. Marshal Konev, Zhukov's long-standing rival in the race for Berlin, launched a sharp critique. He spoke of Georgy Konstantinovich's difficult character, his arrogance, and his un-party behavior. Konev's words reeked of old resentment and, perhaps, a desire to secure himself by demonstrating loyalty to the system. Other military leaders spoke more cautiously, trying to navigate between Scylla and Charybdis. Not to definitively drown Zhukov, but also not to incur Stalin's wrath by defending the disgraced marshal. Rokossovsky, a man of impeccable honor who had gone through the camps before the war and knew the value of interrogation protocols, tried to object, pointing out that Novikov's testimony might have been obtained under duress, but his voice was drowned out in the general chorus of accusations. Most painful for Zhukov was to see how his comrades, with whom he had shared offensive maps, now averted their eyes or cast stones of accusation at him. Georgy Konstantinovich himself conducted himself in this situation with astonishing dignity. He did not repent or humble himself. He rejected accusations of political conspiracy, stating that he had honestly served the motherland and harbored no thoughts of power. However, he admitted that he had a difficult character and that he could be sharp in his judgments. But the main accusation of Bonapartism he categorically denied. Stalin listened intently. He did not need Zhukov's physical liquidation. That could have caused an unpredictable reaction in the army and among the people. He needed to break the marshal morally, to show everyone who was in charge, and to turn a national hero into an outcast. The council's verdict was harsh, but not lethal. Zhukov was removed from the post of Commander-in-Chief of the Ground Forces and sent to command the Odessa military district. It was exile. Honorable, but exile. From the center of world decision-making, from the offices where the map of Europe was being redrawn, he was sent to the provinces, away from troops, tank armadas, and levers of influence. It was a fall from the peak of Olympus into the dusty steppe. However, the trials did not end there. The system was not accustomed to stopping halfway. Following the political accusations came a blow to his reputation, designed to discredit Zhukov in the eyes of ordinary people. The so-called, quote, zero began. MGB investigators conducted clandestine searches of the marshal's apartment and dacha. The reports that landed on Abakumov's desk were filled with lists of material valuables. The documents featured hundreds of meters of fabrics, silk, brocade, velvet, expensive carpets, paintings, dinner sets, hunting rifles, and furniture brought from Germany. These lists look surreal. The hero who operated fronts and armies of millions appeared in them as a petty grabber, stuffing his chests with junk. Propaganda began subtly, through rumors and closed letters, to spread information about the marshal's quote, zero. This was a blow to the very heart of Zhukov's image. The people could forgive him cruelty, could forgive heavy losses in battles, considering them an inevitable price for victory, but to forgive pettiness and greed was much harder. In January 1948, Zhukov wrote a letter to Stalin. This is the document of a man cornered. He explained that many things were given to him as gifts. Some he bought with his own money, and some just lay in warehouses, unwanted by anyone. He admitted his mistakes, said that he had not attached importance to documenting things, that he was guilty of not showing Bolshevik modesty. Reading these lines is difficult. The great commander was forced to justify himself for wool cuts and furniture sets to a man who, with a single stroke of a pen, decided the fates of nations. But beneath this domestic drama lay a profound internal conflict. Zhukov, who grew up in peasant poverty, who went through the crucible of revolution and wars, found himself a hostage of his era. Everyone took trophies. Generals, colonels, quartermasters brought everything they could from Germany. This was perceived as a kind of compensation for 4 years of hell, for destroyed homes, for fallen families. But it was Zhukov who was chosen to be made an example of. His junk collecting became an instrument of political destruction. The paradox was that the system, which itself encouraged the looting of the defeated country at the state level, the export of factories, technologies, cultural values, accused a private individual of the same thing, turning it into a criminal offense. Exile to Odessa, and then to the even more remote Ural military district, became a time of heavy contemplation for Zhukov. A man accustomed to scale, to managing gigantic masses of people and equipment, found himself confined within the framework of routine district work. But even there he remained himself. He conducted exercises, hounded officers, demanded discipline. However, his health began to fail. His heart, which had withstood the tension of the Battle of Moscow and the storming of Berlin, began to falter in the silence of disgrace. In 1948, he suffered a heart attack. This was the body's reaction to monstrous injustice and the constant stress of awaiting arrest. Every evening, going to bed, he kept a pistol and an alarm suitcase on his nightstand, ready for them to come for him. The marshal's loneliness during these years was total. Many _quote_0_ turned away, fearing to tarnish themselves with association with the disgraced. The telephone was silent. Letters came rarely. But it was during this period that Georgy Konstantinovich's iron will manifested itself. He didn't become an alcoholic, didn't break down, didn't write penitent letters begging for mercy at any cost. He maintained his core. He read a lot, studied military history, wrote for his desk, analyzing the past war. The internal dialogue with himself and with history never ceased for a minute. He understood that his fate was a reflection of the fate of the entire country, where greatness and baseness were intertwined in an indissoluble knot. The situation changed instantly in March 1953. The passing of Joseph Stalin was a tectonic shift. The system, having lost its creator, began frantically searching for new footholds. Beria, Malenkov, and Khrushchev, entering the struggle for power, understood. The army is the decisive argument. And the army is Zhukov. He was immediately recalled to Moscow. It was the return of a triumphant, but now with graying temples and scars on his heart. Zhukov played a key role in the arrest of Lavrenti Beria. The irony of fate. The man whose department collected compromising material on the Marshal and prepared his arrest was himself arrested with Zhukov's direct participation. The Marshal personally entered the office where the Presidium of the Central Committee was meeting and commanded, "Hands up!" It was a moment of catharsis, a moment of retribution. Military force once again asserted its supremacy over the special services. It seemed that justice had triumphed. Zhukov became the Minister of Defense, first deputy chairman of the Council of Ministers. His influence was enormous. He carried out reforms, reduced the army, introduced new technologies, including nuclear weapons. He was Khrushchev's pillar. It was Zhukov who saved Khrushchev in 1957 when the anti-party group, Molotov, Malenkov, Kaganovich, tried to remove Nikita Sergeyevich. Zhukov then uttered his famous phrase, "The army is against this decision and not a single tank will move without my order." This phrase proved fatal for him. Khrushchev, being a cunning and cautious politician, heard in these words the same threat that Stalin had once heard. If the Minister of Defense can declare that tanks obey only him, it means he is stronger than the party. It means he is dangerous. History had come full circle. Again, the fear of Bonapartism. Again, the jealousy of glory. Again, intrigues behind his back. In October 1957, Zhukov was sent on a business trip to Yugoslavia and Albania. While he was visiting the Balkans, a reprisal was being prepared in Moscow. Upon his return, directly at the airfield, he felt the chill of alienation. He was taken not to Khrushchev, but to a meeting of the Presidium of the Central Committee, and then to a plenum. The scenario repeated itself with frightening accuracy. Only the scenery and actors had changed. Now it was Khrushchev, whom Zhukov had saved only a few months earlier, who accused him of cultivating a personality cult, of adventurism and detachment from the party. And again, the betrayal of comrades in arms, the same marshals, Konev, Malinovsky, Eremenko, Chuikov, speak from the rostrum, denouncing their combat commander. They talk about his rudeness, about how he suppressed political officers, that he wanted to turn the army into his personal domain. It was especially painful to hear the speech of Rodion Malinovsky, whom Zhukov considered a friend. The system once again proved its ability to break human ties, turning comrades in arms into executioners. Zhukov tried to defend himself, but his arguments were drowned out by the roar of approval for the prearranged reprisal. He was removed from all posts and sent into retirement, into full, final retirement. He was only 60 years old, the prime of life for a politician and strategist. But he was erased from active life, forbidden to publish, his circle of communication restricted. Zhukov's name began to be expunged from the history of the war. In films and books, victories were won by _quote _1_, and the role of a specific commander was leveled to the status of a simple executor. Georgy Konstantinovich's last years were spent working on his memoirs, reminiscences and reflections. This was his last battle, a battle for truth, for his name in history. Censorship mercilessly mutilated his manuscript. They demanded that he include mentions of Brezhnev's quote, 3, who during the war was only a colonel in a secondary sector of the front. Zhukov resisted, haggled over every paragraph, made compromises, just so the book would see the light of day. He understood. If he didn't write his version of events, others would do it for him, and then the truth would be lost forever. The book came out. It became a bestseller. People stood in lines all night to buy it. It was a victory, albeit a paper one. The popular love, which they had tried to stifle with decades of disgrace, had not disappeared. People remembered who took Berlin. Georgy Zhukov's death in 1974 marked the end of his earthly journey, but not of the debates about him. His figure remains one of the most controversial and monumental in the history of the 20th century. He was a tough, at times ruthless man. He sent people to certain death if the operational situation demanded it. He could be rude and arrogant. But such a man, forged from steel and will, proved necessary to history at the moment of the greatest catastrophe. The lesson of Zhukov's fate is a lesson about the nature of power and the hero's place within it. A totalitarian system built on submission and fear cannot coexist with a bright, independent personality. A hero is only needed in times of danger. When the danger has passed, the hero becomes a burden, a living reproach to those who sat out the war in the rear or wove intrigues. Zhukov's Bonapartism was a myth invented by mediocrities to justify their fear of talent. But this myth proved stronger than reality. Zhukov's tragedy is not just a personal drama. It is the drama of an entire generation that bore an inhuman burden of war on its shoulders, defeated the most terrible evil in human history, but could never defeat the internal dragon, the system that devours its own children. However, time puts everything in its place. The names of the persecutors, Abakumov's investigators, party functionaries who wrote denunciations, are known today only to historians. And Zhukov's monument stands at the entrance to Red Square. He is on horseback again, trampling the enemy's banners with his hooves again, and the eternal rain of history washes away the dirt of slander from his bronze uniform, leaving only the austere shine of military glory. This horseman is frozen in eternal motion, reminding us that true glory is not given by presidium decrees and is not taken away by plenum resolutions. It is born on battlefields and lives in the memory of the people, which, unlike political expediency, has the amazing ability to preserve the essential and sift out the husk. Georgy Zhukov lost the bureaucratic games, but won the war against time, and this victory is final.